It's about advancement, opportunity, the future's about respect. This ain't your old school NFL anymore. The women got now and next. Stop the music so they can bow and flex. Catherine Smith, yes, the first 4-time female coach, so she put it down for the rest. If it was a test, here's a cheat sheet. In 2020 on week 3, it was a woman official and 2 coaches on the sideline. That's a 3-P. Shout to Jen King, the first female black coach, gave young black girls mad hope. Now the dream is too real and that's dope. I mean, look, y'all, thanks to the leaders and visionaries in football, it's 8 female coaches. 6 years ago there were none. Shows how we took off. We ain't slowing down neither. These women gon' need a bigger lane. But we got 2 women coaching at the Super Bowl. You can't find a bigger game. We like to celebrate the first, but we can't wait until there's no more. Cause when that happens, it'll speak volumes how we overcame all the closed doors. From scouting to personnel and football ops, the league took a good stand. And it's far from over, but with who we got, I think the NFL is in good hands. Yeah.
All right, look at that. Changing our show open here for our next guest. Joining us here, second hour of One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you, and pleased to be joined now by NFL Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Sam Rapoport. Back on the show. Sam, good to have you, and a timely time to have you because, and I'll begin here, you've got a big women's forum, the 6th annual, coming up next week, right?
That's right. Yeah, Monday we start virtual for a 2nd year in a row. We're excited to get going. 6 years, long time, but we've seen a lot of success since the program started.
I'll say this, anybody who watches the NFL as closely as we do, one of the things you notice about the last 6 years is more and more women in more and more roles, both on the field and off the field. Of course, you see, it's great because you see the ponytails and the officials, everyone's like, oh, there you go, and you notice it, right? And then there's also off the field, tons more females that are all over the league. It's got to be gratifying for you guys in the last 6 years to see that happen, not only behind the scenes, but also front-facing on the field and in other executive offices.
There's no question. You know, when it first started, it was wow, there's a ponytail, or wow, you know, there's a woman on the sideline. And then, you know, our club owners and club GMs and head coaches, like, they all decided to make changes, right? So now you see Kim Pegula, obviously, who was the first female president in the NFL, and now we have 2. You know, we started with 1 female coach at the Bills, and then at the beginning of last season, we had 12. So it's certainly gratifying to see that it's starting to become more normal and less about the first this and that, but more, let's just get to normalization so these women can just do their jobs instead of having to focus on the spotlight.
And then, Sam, with respect to the forum next week, as I understand it, it's actually trying to put a greater focus on women of color, connecting them with high-ranking people in the league. And I know the Bills are pretty well represented, right?
No question. The Bills are always really represented since the program started. Kim was actually the first owner to raise her hand to speak at this program 6 years ago when she didn't know me or anything about it. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for the Bills for that reason. But Coach McDermott, Brandon Beane, Kim Pegula, and others, Andy Gosper, Michelle Geter, are all speaking this year. And, you know, it's fantastic to see the progress in what they've done, what you all have done at the Bills to set the standard for, you know, women being everywhere and not just being, you know, a token hire or one here, one there. It really is ubiquitous at the Bills, and that's what we're striving for at all 32.
What is the what's the next step? What's the agenda for this forum going to be? Is there any, what's the the topic that you want to address? Certainly, you want to continue to advance. But is there, a different change of direction or an extra added topic that you're going to talk about this year that you're going to emphasize?
There is. So since we started the program, 23 clubs have hired women directly from the program, and we want to shoot for 32. So we want the entire NFL to get on board with this. And what we're doing is just offering a service to the clubs, right? We know that women don't find themselves in the same social circles as men in football situations to get these jobs. So we create a platform to put them in rooms, whether that's virtual or in person, to meet people who could potentially hire them. And I remember 2 years ago, Coach McDermott, when we were at Combine, and I'm going to talk about this at the open of the program, he was so impressed by someone that he didn't even let her get to the airport before he called her and offered her a job. And if it wasn't for the program, I'm not sure how Coach McDermott would have been in touch with her. So, that's really the idea behind the program, is get them in a room and they earn these opportunities on their own. We don't do that at all. That's all on the head coaches, GMs, and the participants themselves.
And then I would imagine, Sam, just to kind of pump up your podcast too, because you co-host the Earnin podcast, and which kind of focuses on stories about women in the NFL, but is maybe just to kind of shine a light on that and let people know about that a little bit more. Do you do that weekly? And then what is like the main content that you guys try to shine a light on with respect to the league?
Absolutely. So Jane Skinner Goodell, who happens to be married to Commissioner Goodell, but is also a veteran journalist, has been doing this for quite some time. She took a look around at the NFL and, saw how expedited the progress was and said, we have to document this in some way. So really, this was Jane's brainchild. She decided to, start this podcast and television series, asked me to host it, which I was reluctant at first, but certainly got on board and happy I did, because what we did is we're chronicling a moment in time in the NFL that we hope is an inflection point for the future of the league. This is when we're seeing a lot of first females in coaching positions, first females in scouting positions. And, Jane's vision was, let's get them all on a podcast and talk about why it happened, how it happened, the true challenges, right? It's not all rose-colored glasses. There are some true challenges that women in the NFL face that most men don't have to deal with. So we dive into it. And it was incredible to do. And now all of the season 1 episodes are live as of a couple weeks ago.
What does it look like for these women to get acclimated into the game? How do they get their foot in the door? How do they get, to the vernacular of how to speak about it? How do they get reps and coaching? Where does that all begin for most of them?
Yeah, interestingly, many of them have played tackle football. And a lot of people don't know that women play competitive tackle football in the country. At one point, there was 123 teams, thousands of women play. And so through football circles in that way, or through our program, they get connected to head coaches, and general managers and such. And so I think all but one, if I'm not mistaken, of the female coaches in the NFL right now played professional tackle football or semi-pro tackle football. But it's not a requirement. We know for men also it's not a requirement, and they get their reps the same way. They start out really green like everyone does, and it's all about their attitude of how they're willing to learn and willing to get better. And if you look at, just using the Bills as an example, if you look what Coach McDermott does, to develop young coaches, I think you've had 3 or 4 female coaches in the Bills who've now gone on to other opportunities. So it's, that's really, we need that commitment from everyone in order to accelerate this effort.
And I know the forum is going to be a part of that, as you said, putting women in social circles with people that have the power to do that kind of hiring. But what about the on-ramping? Because I know there were 12 women assistant coaches during the 2021 preseason. And, we've heard over the years about the fellowship coaching program. Are the women included under that umbrella, or is there a separate arm to on-ramp them?
It's a great question. So it's 2-part answer. So yes, they are included in the Bill Walsh Fellowship. So several female coaches were involved in that program last year, and they have been for quite some time. But we also, at our program, we spend quite a bit of time developing them. Not because they're women. Everyone needs development when you're an entry level and you're starting out and you don't know, what you're doing. I certainly needed it when I was growing up. But we put the participants every year through a 2-part development program, one session, which is 2 hours before the program starts, and then another 2 hours during the program. Before the program, we teach them how to impress head coaches and GMs because they're all in their young 20s, right? I definitely would not have impressed John McDermott when I was 23 years old. But, we take them through that. And then we also take them through skills that they need to excel, right? And again, this is not gender specific. Any population of people could listen to this and use it to thrive. It just so happens that we know that women are so vastly underrepresented in these roles. And that's why right now we're focusing on that group of people.
What's the next step for this program, for this seminar, and moving forward? Certainly the numbers are one way of categorizing it and quantifying it. What else?
Yeah, we want women on all 32 teams on their sidelines. That's when it'll start to become normal, because the overall goal here is normalization. we don't like the spotlight. We don't like to say the first female this and that. No one wants that title. We don't want to say it. We acknowledge it and we move on. But the next step for the program is that if every club gets involved and we start seeing women on sidelines of every NFL team, which it should be, because, you know, people identify as women make up half the population, that will be success, to answer your question directly. And it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, and I know that the Bills aren't the only team doing this, but, you know, you mentioned one of your speakers is going to be Andrea Gosper. We call her Andy here at the office, but Andy's in more of in the scouting department and the personnel department role, and I would imagine you're looking to, you know, diversify the scope of female representation in football as well. And I know the Bills probably aren't the only person with a female in the scouting or personnel department, but her being able to kind of come to that forum and share that, because I think when women think about getting into football, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I think a lot of people think about the coaching avenue. So is Andy going to kind of share that, hey, there are other avenues too?
Definitely. And I think there's so many women in college football who do not consider the GM track, that we call it, because they don't really know it exists, because in college recruiting is completely different than what scouting is in the NFL. And Andy's such an interesting story, because we found her, and I remember she contacted us after the program and said, can I just ask you, like, how did you find me? Like, where did you guys come from? And now in speaking to Brandon Bean, you know, he tells me she's one of the best scouts he's ever had. So, you know, it's just one after the other. The Bills, honestly, success stories of how this can work. But Andy will be speaking with Coach and with Brandon Bean and Michelle Geeter, who has an incredible reputation as well, about that exact thing, Steve, about, you know, that if you're in recruiting or if you're in football operations, have you ever considered the evaluation side and the player personnel side? And we've seen many women from the program divert their interest from that area, which is typical in college football, to the scouting GM track.
What is the biggest obstacle? Is it maybe supply of qualified ladies to do it? Are you still getting any pushback from any of the teams, even the ones that don't have females on their coaching staff or in their building? Are you still getting pushback from them at all? And certainly the benefits of and the success that they've had so far in their inclusion has got to, like, knock down all those barriers, right? I mean, so what's the biggest obstacle? Is it getting them trained up so they are qualified to do these jobs? Is it awareness that, you know, of where you can find women to be a part of their program? And I hopefully there can't be any pushback over this because of the success they've already had.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's two things I would say that the main barrier. One, I mean, clubs probably wouldn't communicate to me if they didn't want women, but I think there's
Right.
still a preconceived notion about women's contributions to football. And that's something that all the women who are currently working in football operations are constantly fighting against, those bias, those stereotypes, when really they just want to do their darn jobs. Right. But interestingly, on the coaching side, and this is a good problem to have, the challenge we have is that the demand outweighs the supply right now. And, you know, there are more and more head coaches that are understanding the value in including the whole population. And we need more and more women to get into coaching, you know, at the entry level ranks at Pee Wee football, high school, college, so we can keep feeding the pipeline. So we do have candidates who have enough experience to work in NFL teams.
No, we've talked about, before we came on, we were talking about, you know, Earning It and the series that is on. You got 5 episodes out about, you know, this topic about women in football. How much feedback, and it seems to me that this has got to be really inspiring for a young generation of people. Here in Buffalo, I mean, it's a whole family. We get, you know, young women, middle-aged women, and the whole family. I mean, everybody, men and women, black and white, rich and poor, old and young, are all huge Bills fans. This has got to be really inspiring for the entire generation of young people to know that there are a multitude of career opportunities in football, even if you're not 6'6", 300 pounds.
No question. And I've had the great privilege of speaking with Billie Jean King quite a bit. And, you know, she drills into all of us. If you can't be what you can't see. And I think what Earnin It is doing, not just for, you know, women in college football and women in the NFL, but also for young girls growing up who love this sport as much as anyone does, for them to watch the show and see women in those positions, then maybe they can direct their careers or their interests to football. Whereas most girls growing up 5-10 years ago, we didn't even dream it up. We didn't even know it was a possibility. I would have liked to coach football. Honestly, I never even crossed my mind that it was a possibility for me. And so really, I think that representation is so key to young girls growing up. And I hope they watch the series. And if they love football, women make up 47% of the NFL fan base. So if they love football as much as anyone does and they want to work in it, they understand that there's a spot for them.
And that series can be seen on Peacock. That is the streaming network for NBC. And episode 5, Greatest Show on Earth, is the latest one that's going to be airing tonight, I believe. So that's good. And I knowing Sam tries to be... she always tries to sync everything up. I am not surprised in the least that this forum on Monday and Tuesday is during Women's History Month. I've got to believe that is no coincidence. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, we typically hold it in February at the Combine, but because we had to go virtual this year, we had to find a spot in March, which perfectly synced up with, Women's History Month. So if anyone needs additional incentives, to hire female candidates this month, there it is.
There you go.
Perfect.
Sam, thanks as
Thank you,
always for the
Sam.
time. It's good to catch up with you again. Good luck with the forum next week.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you. I appreciate it.